Very worshipful installing officer, I now present to you for installation Worshipful Brother Erickson Pan, who has been duly elected to serve as treasurer for the ensuing year.
Worshipful Brother Erickson M. Pan, you have been elected treasurer of this lodge, and I will now invest you with the jewel of your office, the keys. The keys forming the jewel of your station have a twofold significance. They are instruments to bind as well as to make loose, to make fast as well as to open. They will never, I am confident, be used by you in any other manner than that the laws and regulations of the lodge shall direct. It is your duty to receive all monies from the secretary, keep a just and accurate account thereof, pay the same out by the order of the worshipful master with the consent of the lodge. You will now be conducted to your proper place in the lodge. Very worshipful Master of Ceremonies, you will next present the Secretary-elect.
Very worshipful installing officer, I now present to you for installation Worshipful Brother Alberto C. Dumlao, immediate past master, Malolos Lodge 46, who has been duly elected as secretary for the ensuing year.
Worshipful Brother Alberto C. Dumlao, you have been elected secretary of this lodge, and I now invest you with the jewel of your office, the pens. In investing you with your official jewels, the pens, I am persuaded that they will make an endearing record not only to your praise, but all to the welfare of the lodge. It is your duty to observe the will and pleasure of the worshipful master, to keep a faithful record of all things proper to be written, transmit monthly a copy of the same to the Grand Lodge as required by our laws, to receive all monies from the brethren, pay the same out to the treasurer, and take his receipt. Therefore, you will now be conducted to your proper place. Master of Ceremonies, you will next present the auditor-elect.
Very worshipful installing officer, I now present to you for installation Very worshipful Amado Lito Catalan, who has been elected as auditor for the ensuing year.
Very worshipful Amado Lito Catalan, you have been elected auditor of this lodge, and I will now invest you with the jewel of your office, the cross, key, and pen. vigilant that the funds and other properties of the lodge entrusted to the treasurer and to the secretary are duly accounted for and properly safeguarded. You will now be conducted to your proper place. Very worshipful Master of Ceremonies, you will next present the brother who has been appointed to serve this lodge as a chaplain.
Very worshipful installing officer, I present to you for installation Brother Mark O'Neill Alforja, who has been appointed as chaplain of this lodge.
Reverend Brother, that holy book, which is the chart and textbook of your sacred calling, is also the great light of Masonry, and forever sheds its benignant rays upon every lawful assemblage of free and accepted Masons. Teach us from its life-giving precept, and invoke upon our labors the blessings of that divine being, whose infinite goodness is so fully revealed and unfolds to us, and warn us by the lessons of wisdom and truth, and you have faithfully performed your sacred function and fulfilled your important task. It is your duty to perform those solemn services which we should constantly render to our great Creator. And when by one whose holy profession is to allure to brighter worlds and lead the way, may by elevating our thoughts, strengthening our virtues, and purifying our minds, prepare us for admission in the society of the blessed in the realms of life and life eternal. It is fitting that an emblem of the sacred volume be the jewel of your office, which you will now be invested. And you will now be conducted to your proper place in the lodge. Present the brother who has been appointed marshal of this lodge.
Very worshipful installing officer, I present to you for installation Brother Claudio T. Ragudo, who has been duly appointed to serve as marshal for the ensuing year.
Brother Clodoaldo T. Ragudo, you have been appointed marshal of this lodge, and you will now be invested with a jewel and symbol of your office. The baton is an emblem of command and is sufficiently significant of your duties. You will, under the direction of the Master, take charge of all processions, and as the proper performance of many ceremonies will depend upon the manner in which your duties are discharged, you are enjoined to be most careful in their performance. You will now be conducted to your proper place in the lodge. Master of Ceremonies, you will next present the brethren who have been appointed deacons of this lodge.
Very worshipful installing officer, I present to you for installation Brother Chris Arellano, who has been appointed as senior deacon, and Brother Paulo R. Cruz, who has been appointed as junior deacon for the ensuing year.
Brother Chris Arellano and Brother Paulo Cruz, you have been appointed deacons of this lodge, and you will now be invested with the jewels of your office. Your province to attend upon the master and wardens and to act as their proxies in the active duties of this lodge. It will be your special duty, Brother Senior Deacon, to carry messages from the Worshipful Master in the East to the Senior Warden in the West and elsewhere about the lodge as required, to attend to all alarms at the door of the preparation room, to receive and conduct candidates, introduce and accommodate visiting brethren. You, Brother Junior Deacon, to carry messages from the Senior Warden in the West to the Junior Warden in the South and elsewhere about the lodge as directed, to attend to all alarms at the door and to see that the lodge is duly tiled. Those rods, my brother, distinctive of your office, which will now be entrusted to your care. Deportment in the lodge, that you will discharge your duties with ability and zeal. I dismiss you to your respective places in the lodge. Master of Ceremonies, you will now present to me the brethren who have been appointed Harmony Officer, Orator, Almoner, Proficiency Master, and Historian.
Very worshipful installing officer, I present to you for installation Brother Arnalfo T. Valiente, Brother Felicissimo J. Castro, Brother Vicente F. Tayag, very worshipful Nolito Adafe L. Maglambayan, who has been duly appointed to serve as orator, almoner, proficiency master, and historian, respectively.
Brethren, we most cordially congratulate you on your selection and appointments to the various offices of this lodge which you are about to be installed. Your well-known knowledge of Masonic laws and precedent, your familiarity with the Constitution, laws, and regulations of the lodge, and your acknowledged uprightness of character and integrity of purpose supersedes the necessity of placing you under any special obligation concerning the duties which you are about to assume. There is no other human institution which requires of its votaries a more faithful and conscientious discharge than thus the Masonic fraternity. Therefore, it is expected that you will at no time lose sight of the great and underlying principles of our institution, that you will discharge your duties with credit to yourself and honor to the fraternity, and we pledge you the active assistance and sympathy of the brethren of your lodge. Go forth, therefore, in the discharge of these duties, and I have no doubt that the result will prove the wisdom of your selection. You will now be invested with the jewels of your office, and you will now be conducted to your several places in the lodge. Master of Ceremonies, you will next present the brethren who have been appointed senior and junior stewards.
Very worshipful installing officer, I present to you for installation Brother Lorenzo C. Frias and Brother Arnel E. Gudaca, who's been appointed to serve as senior and junior stewards of this lodge.
Brother Lorenzo Frias and Brother Arnel Gudaca, you have been appointed stewards of this lodge, and I will now instruct you with your duties. In olden times, your functions was to superintend and provide for the festivals of the craft, to assist in the collection of dues and subscriptions, to keep a record of the expenses for refreshments, and to see that all tables are properly supplied and every brother suitably provided for. In later times, however, the provision of actual refreshments in lodges has generally ceased, and your functions will now be to prepare candidates for admission and to perform those duties which Masonic custom has assigned you on days of procession. Receive your jewels together with the white rods. And repair to your respective places in the lodge. Very worshipful Master of Ceremonies, you will next present the brother who has been appointed timer of this lodge. pass or repass, but such as are duly qualified. So should it admonish us to set a guard over our thoughts, a watch to our lips, and post a sentinel over our actions, thereby preventing the approach of unworthy thoughts and deeds, and preserving consciences void of offense towards God and man. You will now be conducted to your proper place in the lodge. Worshipful sir, I congratulate you. The duties incumbent upon you on your exalted station are fraught with grave responsibilities. Remember that the honor, reputation, and usefulness of the lodge will materially depend upon the skills and assiduities with which you manage its concerns, and that the happiness of its members will be generally promoted in proportion to the watchful care with which you cherish the genuine principles of our institution. For a pattern of imitation, consider the great luminary of nature, which, rising from the east, regularly diffuse light and luster to all within its circle. In a like manner, it is your province to spread and communicate light and instructions to the brethren of your lodge. Forcibly impress upon them the dignity and high importance of Freemasonry, and seriously admonish them never to disgrace them. Charge them to practice outside the lodge those great moral duties which they have been taught in, and by amiable, discreet, and virtuous conduct, to convince mankind of the goodness of our institution, so that when a person is said to be a member of it, the world may know that he is one, to whom the burdened heart may pour out its sorrows, one whom distress may prefer its suit, one whose hand is guided by justice, and whose heart is expanded by benevolence. In short, by a diligent observance of the bylaws of your lodge, the constitution of the fraternity, and above all, the Holy Scripture, which is given to us as a rule and guide of our faith, that you may enable to acquit yourself with the highest honors here, and lay up a crown of rejoicing that will continue when time shall be no more. Brothers senior and junior wardens, please rise. You are too well acquainted with the principles of Masonry to warrant any distrust that you will be found wanting in the discharge of your duties. Suffice it to say that what you see praiseworthy in others, you should carefully imitate, and what in them appeared to be defective, you yourselves should avoid. You should be examples of discretion and propriety, for it is only by due regard to our laws and regulations, as shown in your own conduct, that you can expect obedience to them from others. You are assiduously to assist the worshipful master in the discharge of his duties, diffusing light and imparting knowledge to all whom he shall put under your care. In the absence of the master, you are to succeed to higher duties, and your acquirements must therefore be such as will ensure the proper instructions to the craft. From the spirit which you are hitherto evinced, I entertain no doubt that your future conduct will be such as will merit the applause of your brethren and a testimony of a good conscience. The brethren of Malolos Lodge number 46 will now rise. Such is the nature of our constitution, that as some must of necessity rule and teach, so must others, of course, learn to submit and obey. Humility in both is an essential duty. The officers that you have chosen to govern your lodge are sufficiently conversant with the rules of propriety and laws of our institution to avoid exceeding the powers which they have been entrusted, and you are of too generous disposition to envy their preferment. I therefore trust you that you will have but one aim, to please one another and unite in the grand design of promoting happiness. Finally, my brethren, as this association has been formed and perfected in much unanimity and concord, may it long continue. May you long enjoy every satisfaction and delight which disinterested friendship can afford. May kindness and brotherly affection distinguish your conduct as men and as Masons. Within these peaceful walls, may your children's children celebrate with joy and gratitude the annual recurrence of this auspicious solemnity. And may the tenets of your profession be transmitted through this lodge, pure and unimpaired, from generations to generations. Worshipful Master, it now remains for me to present to you the gabel, the emblem of power. In the hands of the Master, it may be an instrument of great good or of greater evil. With it, the Master governs his lodge, and the prosperity and welfare of the lodge in a great measure will depend upon its judicious use. I am confident that it will be wielded for the best interests of your brethren. Worshipful Master, behold your brethren. Brethren, behold our worshipful Master. The brethren of Malolos Lodge number 46 will, under the direction of the very worshipful Master of Ceremonies, form in procession and salute our worshipful Master in due Very worshipful Master of Ceremonies, you will now make proclamation.
By order of the most worshipful Grand Lodge of free and accepted nations of the Philippines, I do now proclaim the Centennial officers of Malolos Lodge number 46 duly installed.
Congratulations, Worshipful Master Manuel, on your ascent to the east. You have now been officially installed as my Centennial Master, Malolos Lodge number 46 Centennial Master. And with that, may we request for you to address the brethren.
Right, Worshipful Agapito S. Suan Jr., our Deputy Grand Master of the Most Worshipful Grand Lodge of the Philippines, our guest of honor and speaker, who will be aptly introduced later. Very Worshipful Pablo T. Panganiban, our beloved District Deputy Grand Master of the Masonic District R3 Bulacan, with all of his very worshipful District Grand Lecturers, and also very worshipful Joey Pangilinan. Very worshipful Joselito Pascual, our Grand Lodge Inspector. Very worshipful Faustino C. Garcia, our inspirational speaker, who again will be aptly introduced later. Very worshipful Carlo Pacifico Aniag, our past District Deputy Grand Master, our installing officer. Very worshipful sirs on the floor, worshipful sirs, my brothers, within and without the jurisdiction of the Most Worshipful Grand Lodge of the Philippines, ladies and gentlemen, magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Gawin na ba? Thank you. Sorry. I would like to express my deepest gratitude to all of you for being with us today on our installation of elected and appointed officers for this Centennial year 2019. Maraming salamat po. And begging your indulgence, I would like to continue, before I continue with this address, I would like to recognize a few of my stakeholders. And because I don't like to make today about me, because this is not about me. Rather, today is about the 99 that came before me. Because today is the fruit of all their exhaustive labors. Today is the continuation of the history that they wrote since 1919. So, I would like to request that all the past masters of Malolos Lodge number 46 to please rise. During the speech of our beloved SGIG, Illustrious Faustino Garcia, in the installation ceremony of Bulacan Body's Ancient and Accepted Scottish Rite, he said that the life of the lodge depends on how active and how dismal the attendance and support are of the past masters of the lodge. And I believe, and nag-text pa ako sa inyo noon, if you remember, I believe and I agree with this lesson from him. And I also recognize, kung narinig yung sinabi ni very worshipful Carlo kanina, I also recognize and acknowledge that the first lesson a worshipful master must learn on his ascent to this most coveted seat in the East is humility. The worshipful master should, all of Masons, be the humblest one in the lodge. May I also request then now that all the members of Malolos Lodge 46, so please rise. I would like to thank you for the trust and confidence that you repose in me for the stewardship of the lodge for this centennial year. And I do so solemnly and sincerely promise and vow to put the welfare of the lodge and to let peace and harmony prevail at every strike of this gable on the vessel. To my installing team, very worshipful Carlo, Pacifico, Aniag, very worshipful Reynaldo, Cabauatan Jr., worshipful Brother Ramil Katanghal, to my guest of honor and speaker, Right Worshipful Agapito Suan, to our beloved inspirational speaker, very worshipful Faustino Garcia, our DDGM, very worshipful Pablo Panganiban, then the rest of his Lusigan lecturers, to very worshipful Gabi Crisostomo, to very worshipful Norberto Ramos Jr., very worshipful Boyet Crisostomo, very worshipful Charismatic Brother Paulo Cruz, very worshipful Emmanuel Sakay. Maraming salamat po. About 30 years ago, in 1988, I was made a Dimole, and I knelt on the same altar. I took my solemn obligation on that same altar, kissed the same holy book in which this dream, this ascent to the Oriental chairs has started. Thus, I would also like to recognize those who are instrumental to the realization of this dream. So, please, yung mga Jurassic, this time, ang tawag po namin sa mga senior Dimole, Jurassic. Please rise. Masyado kayong behave ngayon, ano? Kasi nandito si Dad Tino, tsaka si Dad Noli, ano? Thank you. Okay. And the rest of the members of the Order of Dimole, please rise. I always say this, and we'll say it again. A Dimole must preserve the high standards to which he has pledged himself. Alam na yan. Thus, be worthy of the martyred hero whose name we have taken upon our lips. And for indeed, once a Dimole, thank you. Nor worthy to mention too that today is the centennial celebration of the Order of Dimole. Nandun po sila sa PICC ngayon, kaya we are actually celebrating 2 centennials today. Next, may I also request my wife, my kids, Don and Gabi, Ate and Jane, my brother and sisters, my nieces and nephews, to please rise. Thank you for your support sa preparation na ginawa ni Ate for funding this installation. Thank you. Maraming salamat. Magpapaalam po ako sa inyo, lalong-lalo na kay Ate Jane at sa aking kambal, that I would be remiss in my duty. Napansin niyo ba yung installation, yung Worshipful Master nagpapaalam sa ating magiging busy ako lalo, and thank you. So please be seated. And also, if I miss to mention anyone, I know, pagpahuminino po, na medyo nakakaba pag nandito ka. So, minsan di ko maalala lahat, but I know that you know that I am very grateful that you are here and that you've helped me. 100 years, what a feat. And very few can boast of such accomplishment. For this centennial term, the theme is renewing Masonic relevance in the next 100 years through brotherly love, belief, and truth. Let me expound on this. In his book, if you read this book, our beloved, very worshipful Colonel Reynaldo Cabauatan Sr., the late very worshipful Colonel Sir asked the question, how will the Masons now answer the question, where are the Filipino Masons of today? Masons, while relying heavily on tradition, are also agents of change. Masons always heed the clarion call of times, and as I said in my speech during the Centennial Ball in Manila Hotel, one cannot separate the history of Masonry in the Philippines and Philippine history itself. They are intertwined. A study of one is the study of the other. And again, I know you'll ask me why. Masons always challenge the status quo, and almost all of the time, they are up to the challenge. They show their relevance at the moment it is needed. At that moment, in that political climate, Masons show how relevant they are. Let us have a short review of history. In 1896, Philippine Revolution, sabi ni Reynaldo, it was Masonically inspired, Masonically led, Masonically executed. In 1898, Malolos Congress was led by a Mason. Then the first Philippine Republic in 1899. Then the Malolos Constitution was signed by 78 Masons out of 138 assignees. Then the Commonwealth, headed by Manuel, our beloved Grand Master then, who constituted Malolos Lodge in 1919. In 1934, yung Constitutional Convention that came up with the 1935 Constitution was led by Worshipful Brother Jose Altabas, also a Mason. And incidentally, in that Constitutional Convention, our very own Worshipful Brother Nicolas Buendia, who is our first Worshipful Master, and Vicente Soto I, also a Malolos Lodge member, were members of that Constitutional Convention. In 1945, General Douglas MacArthur liberated Manila to the Philippines, and also Mason, di ba? And then it was Jose P. Laurel and Manuel Rojas who rebuilt the country. So, do you see the pattern? Natay niyo yung pattern? We can brag about excellence. We can brag about past performance. Okay. Now, do you see why the late Colonel Ray Cabauatan asked that question? No? Si Reggie, do you see why? In the book, The World is Flat, Thomas Friedman, quoting Michael Hammer, also a noted Mason and author, said, one thing that tells me a company is in trouble is when they tell how good they are in the past. The same with countries. You don't want to forget your identity. And parang you're saying, I'm glad you're great in the 18th century. I'm glad you're great in the 14th century. But that was then. Today is now. So, our Masonic heritage are to be treasured. Yes, we need to treasure them. And indeed, we are treasuring them. We emulate them. We remember them. But this is the new millennium. We have to renew the Masonic relevance that our forebears started and to continue writing history. Remember, 100 years ang Malolos Lodge. 100 years na ang Masonry in Bulacan. So, we have to write the history in our own way. Of course, I'm not saying be like Aguinaldo or Bonifacio and start a revolution, di ba? It is not that. So, in our own way, we need to bring Masonry in the new millennium. While there's no need to do revolution or struggle against oppression, there is a need to rebel against lethargy, struggle against apathy, and start a social revolution. Right? So, how do we do that? How can we bring modern Masons without losing tradition or breaking our ancient landmarks into 21st century? Kasi there are several researchers which are found, and tatlo ang binigay nila. Okay, number 1 is visibility. Okay. Number 2 is social responsibility. And yung number 3 is a combination of both, which is yung sinasabi ko against lethargy. Meaning, napansin nila, medyo tinatamad na daw ang mga Mason in this 21st century. But let me expound on that. Visibility. Again, my brothers, I'm not saying we add more emblems sa kotse natin. Okay, God knows, baka pag tinakpan mo na dumami ng emblem mo, wala ka na makita pag umaatras ka. So, people are confused with Masonry. Are we a religion? Are we a fraternal organization? Are we a labor group? Or worse, if you Google Malolos Lodge, motel ang lalabas. While we have secrets to recognize a true brother in the dark as well as in the light, we are not a secret organization. We existed since time immemorial and we will exist long. Long. Di ba, UGLE celebrated 300 years of recorded history. That is recorded, not even counting the unrecorded. Lohia Malolos 46 existed for 100 years and still remains strong. And in the advent of social media, Internet of Things, we can create visibility for modern Masons. We don't have to go scouting in the dark. We are Masons and we are proud to be one. Public awareness of what we are and what we do. So number 2, yung sasabi ko social responsibility. If you remember yung lecture ng Worshipful Master at the closing ng second degree, the greatest of them is charity. What sets us apart from other NGOs? Di ba sila rin may bloodletting, sila rin may feeding program, maraming charity works. And while we aim to aid and assist distress-worthy brother Master Masons, we also have a responsibility to God, to country, and to fellow men. We need to have more projects that preserve nature, espouse good citizenship, and of course, as I said, the greatest of them is charity, not among ourselves, but also to our fellow men. Bringing modern Masons into the future means making them attuned to the problems of the modern times. Yes, sorry to sound so preachy, but since there's no need for revolt, modern Masons should be attuned to address the problems of these modern times. Example, if you heard yung sa isang school, may nang bully, di ba? Parang, I think nakita niyo yun sa video, yung nang bubuli na bata. While Masons always answer the need to act in a big way, like in the times of Rizal, Del Pilar, Quezon, in these modern times, we can do things in our own small way. And in the end, we'll have a great impact. Di ba, we have tools to chip off the superfluous parts of ourselves so that from a rough aslar, magiging perfect aslar. Hindi lang yan. Marami kang pwedeng gawin as a modern Mason. Yung punctual and regular attendance, paying your dues, participating in all Masonic functions and charities, those in itself will bring ourselves forth as modern Masons. Which actually leads to my third point in renewing Masonic relevance. In a study done by a task force funded by John R. Robinson. John R. Robinson is also a Masonic author, noted speaker. He actually funded a Masonic Information Center to research about Masonry, about moving Masonry into the 20th century and looking at the membership bell curve from 1900s to 2004. Tinignan nila yung membership na bell curve. And they found out that in the 21st century, nag-dwindle yung membership ng Masonry at its lowest. Even though, nung times ng depression in the States, mas madami pa rin member noon. Except nung 1941, which is of course World War II. But during our research, Malolos Lodge, when it started, the first 35 years of Malolos Lodge, 170 ang active members. Kung natatandaan ni Ryan, nung nag-research kami nun sa Grand Lodge.